Tonight. Threw it too short. He has crush. Oh my god, I didn't notice. And I'm lagging. And then the mummy! Dude. Dude, I mean, what do I do there? He fucking went to the left as soon as I shot it, and it just hit my teammate in the brain. There's not much I can do there. Oh shit.
Ask some people, and it's a conflict as old as modern civilization. Ask others, and it's a conflict as old as time itself. The predominantly Jewish modern nation-state of Israel and the predominantly Muslim modern region of Palestine, sometimes called a stateless nation in its own right, have been locked together in a struggle for longer than any living person can remember. In the modern era, the two opposing entities have found themselves in the most intractable conflict on the globe, a title that they've held not for months, not for years, but for nearly a century. Both laying claim to a small stretch of arid land on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea, Israel and Palestine share an incredibly complex history, one that we simply cannot do justice in the span of just, well, however long this video is, but we're gonna go and give it a try anyway. So on today's special and much requested episode of War Graphics, we're gonna be taking a deep dive into the history of the state known as Israel and the stateless territories called Palestine in order to explain the long legacy of violence and mutual alienation that have led us to this moment. We're gonna proceed with a focus on the generations upon generations of ordinary people who have lived at the epicenter of this issue and on the key factors that best explain how we have spiraled toward the pivotal moment that we are now in. And to our viewers today, please understand that if you sit firmly on one side of this conflict, no matter which side it is, then we will not hold back in describing what your favorite state has done, no more than we would hold back the truth of the unbelievable violence that your favorite side has suffered. As will quickly become clear, there is no unimpeachably right side of this issue, but instead, there's one central truth. And that is that always, both the innocent people of Israel and Palestine are the ones who are trampled underfoot in every turn this conflict has ever taken. Alright, as we begin today's episodes, we're going to pull back the curtain just a little bit and reveal one little factoid from behind the scenes. You see, choosing a place to start this video is pretty impossible. We could start in the histories described by Jewish religious text and talk about the destruction of the Kingdom of Israel and the expulsion of the Israelites, either as it's told by the Hebrew Bible or as it went down in the 1700s at the start of what's called the Assyrian captivity. We could start with the conquests of Alexander the Great, or the revolts of the Maccabees, or the survival of Jewish culture in Galilee.
Wow, what did he turn that way? Weirdo.
Start with the life of the Prophet Muhammad and the evolution of competing claims to what is today Israeli territory, or the mutual veneration of what is either known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque or Temple Mount, depending on who you ask. We could start with the First Crusade and the formation of the Kingdom of Jerusalem in the year 1099, or with the final expulsion of the Crusaders from Acre nearly 200 years later. Or we could start with many trials and upheavals of Ottoman rule, leading eventually to a peasant revolt in 1834 that some historians consider to be the first early expression of the entity that would eventually evolve into Palestine. But instead of all that, what we're going to do is we're going to start with this conflict's modern genesis, specifically in the waning years of Ottoman rule in the territory that is today called Israel. At that time, the stretch of land in question was called Ottoman Syria, also encompassing—
Where are you going, bro?
Syria and parts of modern Jordan.
Oh, you want to loot this room?
It was a powerful and culturally Turkish organization, but it had long struggled with revolts and separatism in many of the territories that it held. From a territorial apex in the 17th and 18th centuries, the Ottomans had lost massive swaths of land by the late 19th century, despite concentrating its prodigious economic power in the area now called Turkey. With that waning influence in the Ottoman Empire's outer reaches came a number of nationalist movements, including not one, but two, that began in the same stretch of land beside the Mediterranean. The first was a movement called Zionism. It was a political ideology that held the fundamental objective of creating, supporting, and preserving a nation made by and for Jewish people. But as the Zionist movement told it, that nation couldn't just exist anywhere. Instead, it had to be in the ancient homeland of the Jews, the region in and around Jerusalem. Even the movement's name, Zionism, is a reference to one of the hills of ancient Jerusalem called Zion. Now, for the less religiously inclined among our viewers, we can take a guess at the next question. Why is it so important that this Jewish state be established in this one spot? After all, in the late 1800s, there were plenty of beautiful, lush, sparsely populated places around the world where a few 100,000 Jewish settlers could have easily set up shop. Maybe, say, asking Grover Cleveland nicely for a grant of a few thousand square miles of land on the American Pacific coast, or seeing if the handful of people in Mongolia would be up for a few new neighbors. To put it simply, it's easy to say in the 21st century that there were plenty of other places for Israel to go other than a place surrounded by people who so badly didn't want Israel to exist. The answer to that question comes in the intense
free will and resourcefulness.
Judaism. Unlike, say, Roman Catholicism, where doing a pilgrimage to a certain place is just an opportunity to see the bones of some dead saint or something, Judaism incorporates real implications into religious practice. A good analogue would be in Islam, where there are a lot of things that happen in the holy city of Mecca that simply can't or shouldn't happen anywhere else. Jerusalem's the same way. It's not just a city, it's a religious concept that transcends time itself. Add to that the fact that Jews throughout history have watched Jerusalem destroyed several times now, and
16%.
2,000 years in exile from a spot that their religion lays fundamental
slow as hell, though, holy.
The rising Jewish nationalist movement of the mid-1800s decided to place some focus on getting that territory back. At the time that the Zionist movement first cropped up, most Jews lived outside the region of Palestine, predominantly in Europe. But in many places, especially in Tsarist Russia, that Jewish diaspora faced significant and active persecution, with widespread, virulent anti-Semitism being pretty normalized at the time. With not so much reason to stick around in Europe, and with decent odds that the Ottoman territory of Palestine might reasonably be extricated from its current overlords, the Jewish diaspora began to get active about building plans to return back to their ancestral homeland. In Basel, Switzerland, the first Zionist Congress convened in 1897, featuring 208 delegates who served as a representative body for those Jews who were in favor of Zionism. Now, it's important to note that Zionist goals and ideals were not anywhere near ubiquitous among Jews of the period. The movement was a rather fringe idea at that time, and it actually generated quite a bit of blowback, feeding anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
I can't wear that. What the fuck?
Intentions that negatively impacted the lives of Jews who had nothing to do with it. But it also started to get a bit of forward momentum around the turn of the 20th century. The Zionists received an offer from Great Britain in 1903, offering 6,000 uninhabited square miles of Uganda, but they ultimately declined it. A few years later, they facilitated the movement of Russian Jewish exiles toward Palestine as pioneer settlers because of a wave of pogroms by Tsarist Russia, building Palestine's Jewish population to some 90,000 by the start of World War I. Alright, so that's one of our budding independence movements, but let's talk about the other one. The rise of Arab nationalism, also targeting Palestine. Arabs in Palestine didn't historically face much trouble inside their own region, with the Ottoman leadership being generally content to let Arabs fill Ottoman government administrations in Arab-dominated areas, and the Arab population being generally quite content to enjoy the peace and security that comes with living under an imperial power. But from the mid-19th century, a proportion of Arabs had begun taking inspiration from Slavic, predominantly Christian nationalist movements in the Balkans, who had, by the early 1910s, completely pushed the Ottomans out of their territory and gained their collective independence. Observing all the myriad benefits to controlling states and nations of their own, Arab intellectuals and military veterans began laying the groundwork for eventual independence movements in their territories. Arab nationalism also got a push from the establishment of the Hejaz Railway in 1908, which had the potential to bring pilgrims easily from Damascus to Mecca, but also allowed the Ottomans to expand their administrative influence deep into the Arabian interior, where they had previously kept a very light touch in order to not cause hostility
I can't reach him.
to the ruling
Oh!
tribes of the area. Now, before the start of World War I, The people of Palestine and other pockets of the
Ow.
Levant weren't exactly taking to the idea of Arab nationalism in force. After all, they were still quite content with the state of existence under the Ottomans, and even though some fellow Arabs were revolting in the interior, that was somebody else's rebellion in response to somebody else's problems. But all of that changed with the rise of the Young Turks, an Ottoman group of political reformers who revolted against the absolute rule of the then Sultan in 1908.
Like, these are all pretty good roles, except for like that
The Young
one.
Turk movement had splintered into factionalism, with the faction that eventually won evolving into a Turkish
Young Turks
nationalist
split into
movement that wanted to
factions. Yeah,
extend
we
its
got it.
pan-Turkic ideals across the Arab-populated areas it controlled. It didn't take long for the change in Ottoman policy to start ruffling some feathers in Palestine, where those same Arab nationalist intellectuals that we mentioned just a moment ago were now in a prime position to seize upon the rising disillusionment with the Young Turks. By November of 1914, the Ottoman Empire would enter World War I, and when they did, Arab nationalism became a very interesting prospect for the powerful players on the other side of the conflict to make a few friends and fast. Around that same time, Britain started sending weapons and money to Sharif Hussein ibn Ali, a respected tribal leader in Central Arabia, in preparation for a large-scale rebellion. They also made contact with the Al-Fatah group in Syria, a proudly pan-Arab nationalist movement, to ensure that the fighting men of the eventual rebellion would be tied into an ideology that placed them in stark, unyielding contrast with the Ottomans in the long term. The revolt began on the 5th of June 1916 in an attack on the holy city of Medina. In the following months, rebels would seize ports along the Red Sea with the help of a British naval flotilla, starting a far greater influx of arms and equipment. An Arab nationalist army materialized in short order, relying on British guidance and Egyptian support, and they surged through the desert, battling back and forth with Ottoman forces in what had very quickly turned into a fair fight. By 1918, the leaders of the Arab revolt could claim victory over the Ottoman Empire, who were forced into an armistice and made to negotiate with the British, the French, and the Americans on badly unfavorable terms. Now, with the end of the First World War came the long and difficult process of partitioning the territory where the Ottoman Empire had once stood.
Right, and this is when the Sykes-Picot shit happens, right?
Let the people of the region work out that issue for themselves, but of course that wouldn't be very imperialist of anybody, would it? In Palestine, both Arab nationalists and the Zionist movement could make their respective pitch to the European allies, but neither side had the military might to stand against the Europeans if Britain or France wanted a certain outcome. 2 years prior to the end of the war, a document was signed between Britain and France, with the governments of Italy and Tsarist Russia also aware of the deal that was eventually reached. It was called the 1916 Asia Minor Agreement, but today we know it under a different name, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Drawn up in secret with no input from the people of the region, the Sykes-Picot Agreement laid down strict expectations for how the two European countries would divide up their control of the former Ottoman Empire in the event that they won the war. Under the agreement, the UK would assume either direct control or a controlling influence over territory that included modern-day southern Iraq, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait, a long stretch of the Persian Gulf, southern Israel, and Palestine, as well as a couple of ports, giving them access to the Mediterranean Sea. The French would gain direct control or influence over the modern-day regions of southeast Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, and Kurdistan, as well as a pocket of modern-day northern Iraq. Italy would get southern Anatolia, Russia would get Constantinople, the Turkish Straits, and western Armenia, and a majority of the region of Palestine would be administered internationally, not by Palestine itself, mind you, but by international powers who were working together. The Sykes-Picot Agreement would directly evolve into the 1918 framework that France and Britain referenced to occupy the Middle East, and it guided the breakup of the former Ottoman territories, with the French eventually ceding the region of Palestine completely to the British a few months after the war's end. Now, Sykes-Picot is a unique document in a lot of respects, but perhaps the most stunning thing about it is the sheer deftness in which it managed to make basically nobody happy and basically piss off everybody at once. This was pretty clear at the time, and it's only gotten worse as history's gone on. The Arab leadership of the revolt against the Ottomans had been made aware of at least some parts of the agreement, but had little choice but to agree to it. After all, they were now the active participants in a resistance that could only exist with the help of British weapons and supplies, and would almost certainly be crushed if that support disappeared. It caught serious heat from the Bolsheviks, who were written out of the deal after overthrowing the Russian Tsars, and from Woodrow Wilson of the US, who advocated only accepting deals made via open diplomacy. Even the defeated nations of the Central Powers advocated for a process in which the peoples of stateless nations in the Middle East be given an opportunity to establish independence. Even the Sykes of Sykes-Picot ended up arguing against his own agreement by 1918, contending that serious changes to the document were apt.
It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean the guy who fucking did it behind their back started to say we need to make changes? Like, bitch, you did this. You did this, motherfucker. You were the one who were like, yeah, let's just go behind their back. Fuck these guys. Fuck the Browns. Like, fuck that. What the hell? What do you mean serious changes need to be made? Fucking kill yourself. Jesus Christ.
Absolutely in order. But Sykes-Picot is not the only controversial sheet of paper that we've got to understand here. We've also got to talk about the Balfour Declaration, a tiny 64-word statement that would lay the groundwork for the entire state of Israel.
Oh shit.
It was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917, written from the UK's Foreign Secretary at the time, Arthur Balfour, to British Zionist leader in the Jewish community named Lionel Walter Rothschild. Because of the brevity of this statement, we'll just read it in its entirety, shall we? His Majesty's government view, with favour of the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. Now, there's a lot going on there in just 64 words, isn't there? 64 words, which have been written and circulated as the result of a years-long effort by Zionist members of the British War Cabinet in order to gin up support for Zionist ambition among Jews around the world. At the time, this had been one part an effort by the same Zionists to take advantage of rising tensions, just like the Arab nationalist movement had, and one part an effort by the British government to get all the friends on their side that they possibly could. Again, just like they would do with the Arab nationalists. When it was released at a moment of stalemate that Britain had hoped
to get the triple there
of Jewish support in battle, it became the first time that any major political power had ever advocated for Zionist ideology. The Balfour Declaration came with quite a few holes in its logic. It didn't actually specify whether it advocated a Jewish state or the boundaries that it was referring to when it said
holy fuck.
It also called for the protection of civil and religious rights for Palestinian Arabs, but never consulted with that population before issuing the statement, and never said that their political rights had to be respected, for example, their right to participate in any given system of governance. But all of that didn't really matter in terms of the Balfour Declaration's immediate after effects. It was a massive boost to Zionist ideology all around the world, and it would be a cornerstone of the policies that Britain would create and enforce when they began to administer Palestine. So with all the tumult and controversy of the Great War's end, the explicitly defined constraints of Sykes-Picot were not carried out.
I don't have anything. I don't have anything.
Story today, there's really one element that matters most of all. In the reshuffle, Britain would gain a mandate over Palestine, endorsed by the League of Nations, and when they did, they approached Palestine as informed by the Balfour Declaration itself. By then, the declaration had been endorsed by each of the Allied powers, and it became a cornerstone of the British approach to administration of their new territory. In practice, Britain's leadership of the Palestinian territory showed strongly preferential treatment to the Zionist organization while giving very little attention to the rights or wishes of the Arab locals. The Zionists claimed the territory based largely on the fact that ancient Jews had called Israel home before being scattered into a global diaspora was treated with gravity by the British, while the Palestinian claim, which basically came down to we've been living here for the last 2,000 years, was not taken as seriously. As you probably predict, that decision was not received very well by the Palestinians, especially since it flew in the face of their prior perceptions that the Allied powers had assured Arab independence in exchange for their work fighting against the Ottomans. In its intention, the Palestinian Mandate was supposed to eventually make the transition to independent statehood with the help of the British, but not only did Britain have very little experience in actually helping to facilitate the creation of states rather than simply colonizing them, but they also lacked support from the Palestinian majority. This was particularly problematic because the Zionists in the region had no intention of remaining a minority in Palestine at all, and they took it upon themselves to attract a flood of many thousands of Jewish settlers from all around the world. This accelerated the Palestinians' drift towards Arab nationalism, which led the Zionists to amplify their own nationalistic intent until eventually the region turns into a total powder keg. Now, the first major riots by Palestinians against Jews in this era were the 1921 Jafar riots. They had broken out after the Jewish Communist Party had distributed flyers calling for the development of a Soviet Palestine, which in turn caused a fight to break out at a demonstration by local communists and a counter-protest by a group of socialists. In the surrounding neighborhoods, the Arab population misinterpreted the situation, believing that they were under attack, and broke into Jewish buildings whilst attacking the local residents. The situation spiraled out of control from there, and after a week of bloodletting, 42 Jews and 48 Arabs were dead, alongside about 220 injured on both sides. Violence broke out at a large scale again in the 1929 Barak uprising, with over 100 Jews and over 100 Arabs killed after tensions boiled over.
Just
This
two?
time, the uprising was largely an expression of the Arab population's frustration with a lack of political and economic opportunity, and
You're so annoying, bro. Can you fuck off?
Jewish settlers
Yo! Choose the fire spell!
Palestine played host to a long series of riots and brawls, as well as countless individual displays of violence, both lethal and otherwise. Even against the backdrop of violence, more and more Jewish settlers made their way to Palestine, with some pools.
What? I'm behind the holy lagger, bro.
Others pushed for a home
Holy fucking lagger.
Anti-Semitism in the Soviet states, the rise of Nazism in Germany, and other similarly nasty influences. When those settlers arrived, they enjoyed land grants that were abundant in comparison to the overstressed, depleted fields that the Palestinian Arabs worked. Many of those
I couldn't do it because this guy's like a fucking idiot.
were pushed out of their former communities entirely, forced into slums and shantytowns where religious preachers took on an increasingly anti-Zionist tone. Once there, they had little choice but to accept the British government's position that Arab workers would be paid much less than Jewish ones, further contributing to an economic divide that placed Jews and Arabs clearly on opposite sides. With economic discontent came bitter enmity, enough to pull some Arabs toward anti-Zionist, anti-British militias like the Black Hand, who conducted campaigns of sabotage and minor violence against both of their perceived enemies. Many of the Arabs who didn't join these organizations instead diversified politically, leaning toward independence movements and pro-Palestinian reform parties at unprecedented rates. Before long, these tensions would explode worse than ever during the Great Palestinian Revolt, a massive uprising that lasted over 3 years from 1936 to 1939. In the same
Oh
year,
shit, smart as Goku.
60,000 Jewish settlers arrived to Palestine. The spark that set everything on fire was the murdering of 2 Jews by a group of Arab nationalists, which the Jewish militant group Haganah Bet then responded to by killing 2 Arab laborers in retribution. But other factors, like the recent death of a pro-independence sheik and widespread fear among Jewish settlers that the Palestinians were about to rise up, had already put both sides on a hair trigger. The first few months of the Great Palestinian Revolt were dominated by a general strike, including not only a work stop, but a refusal to pay taxes to the British Palestinian Mandate. Organised, armed Palestinian rebels began attacking targets in the countryside, first in small assaults and instances of sabotage, and then by organising and carrying out attacks in greater numbers. By summer, the Palestinian resistance was destroying Jewish farms, attacking railways and a strategically important oil pipeline, and murdering Jewish civilians in the communities. In response, the British flooded Palestine with troops who poured in from around the world, bringing with them tactics like night raids, flogging, deportation, and torture. As they did so, they trained and equipped Jewish paramilitary forces, transferring many of their more brutal methods as they did. This only served to consolidate support for the revolt among both Palestinian rebels and the villagers in their local communities. And when the British responded to this increased solidarity by engaging in raids against those same villages,
He lightning me and I got smacked, bro.
swelled with recruits. Now, a crisis might have ended in October 1936 when the general strike by the Palestinians was called off in hopes of working towards a peaceful political situation. And that hope was personified in the form of Lord William Robert Wellesley Peel, who had led a commission, aptly named the Peel Commission, that was meant to investigate the causes for unrest in Palestine. Peel's inquiry yielded a few findings that surprised the British, specifically that the Arab members of high political and judicial society had unanimously supported the Palestinian revolt, and secondly, that it had attracted in-person volunteers from multiple neighbouring countries. These were very important observations, and one that spoke to the intractability of the current state of affairs. But just like the prior series of British proposals to break up the Middle East, Peel's proposed answer had the impressive result of pleasing nobody and, well, just alienating everybody. Lord Peel presented 2 bright ideas to the Jewish and Arab public. His preferred solution would partition Palestine into three entities: a small
Three.
Jewish state that was located on the region's most agriculturally productive land, a small British controlled area where the Palestinian Mandate would survive, and a larger Arab state that would have strong ties with Transjordan, or modern day Jordan. His second solution, in case somebody didn't like his first one, was a transfer of nearly 250,000 Palestinian Arabs out of a proposed Jewish state, relocating them to Transjordan outright. Now, in the modern day, it's easy to look at this proposal and perhaps superimpose a little bit of subtext that any solution at this point was going to require some major concessions, and those concessions would only get more severe with time. It was,
So
as we'd term it today,
wait, so what was the problem with, instead of them like merging with what he said, Transjordan or whatever? What was the problem with literally just being like, yo, what if we just make this Palestine? Like, they're just in between Transjordan and this newly formed, or newly whatever gonna be, Jewish state. Was it just cause like the Palestinians didn't have much leverage, or were the British just like, no, fuck that, or were the Jewish people were like, fuck that? Like, who, what, why couldn't have you've just been like, separate state? What was wrong with that?
a two-state solution. But at the time, the Peel, it was, as we'd term it today, a
It was.
solution at this point was going to require some major concessions, and those concessions would only get more severe with time. It was, as we'd term it today, a two-state solution. But at the time the Peel Commission issued its recommendations, it was seen as unthinkable on all sides. The Arab
What?
community disdained the idea of leaving their homes, especially via forced relocation, and were understandably furious at the idea that the Jewish settlers would take all of their useful land. Major
Okay,
exception-
that's the useful land, and also they were being forced out of. Was there no empty area? What, they could have just, like they're doing now, like, built some places in like the empty spot. I need more detail on that.
of the Jewish public were also in opposition, although members of the Zionist movement eventually coalesced around the support of one of their most prominent leaders, David Ben-Gurion, in endorsement of an agreement they felt would eventually work out in their benefit. In another time,
Aid
Britain might have
restricted.
chosen to impose the Peel Commission's recommendations over the objections of the wider Arab world. But remember, this is 1937, and as the Arabs and the Zionists push and pull toward independence, major war is brewing on the European continent. Rather than risk the start of a larger scale anti-Zionist war in the Middle East, Britain rejected the Peel Plan and moved in favour of a solution that left the British Mandate in place. Nobody got the state they'd hoped for, nobody moved any closer to independence, and none of the factors that had led to the Palestinian revolts of 1936 have been addressed. So, about
Hold on. Let me just correct this part quick. Um, um, um. Oh my god, okay. I just wanted to see how many there were, because he only mentioned Sykes-Picot and maybe the Balfour one. But oh my god, there's like 6 different fucking deals. Maybe even there's like 10 before they did this Peel one. Oh my god. Okay, okay. Um. Okay. Well, what about? Oh my god. Okay. 1881 is a. I had to. You have to go farther than that. Because in 1881, driven by a violent and anti-Semitic pro. Is that a typo? Is that a word? Pogroms in Eastern Europe and Russia. Thousands of Jews began migrating to Ottoman Palestine. Okay, well, but what about what about before this? Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Oh, I fucking hate ants. I hate them. No, I hate them. Holy shit. I left a little fucking what you could like croissant, chocolate croissant thing outside for like 30 minutes, bro, and it's just gone. It's just gone. I mean, dude, there's so much to go through though. Like I have to start at when the Ottoman Empire took over at 1517, because there's just so much. Like the Egyptians revolted in 1830 or whatever, and they were like fuck you, the Sultan, and then the Arabs revolted again against them. It's fucking, and then Britain, Austria, and Russia intervened in 1840. In 1840, they wait the Britain, Austria, and Russia intervened militarily in 1840 to force the Egyptians out and restore the weakened Ottoman Sultan to power. Wait, but then why the fuck did they overthrow him later? Like, you guys overthrew him fucking later. When was Sykes-Picot? 1916. Like, you guys, I don't understand. That actually just doesn't make any sense. And then the Ottoman Empire signed treaties called capitulations, capital, whatever the fuck. I can't pronounce that. Capital. No, it's capitulations. I'm so stupid. I read capital. Yeah, no, it's capitulations. With European empires, these treaties granted European powers a legal right to protect religious minorities and exercise bro, am I retarded? Extraterritorial, bro. I am a retard. Jurisdiction inside Ottoman lands. Britain appointed its first consul to Jerusalem in 1838 and positioned itself as a protector of the local Jewish population. France acted as the protector of Catholic Christians. Russia acted as the protector of Orthodox Christians. And nobody protected the the Arabs, Palestine, they weren't Palestinians yet at this point. But the Arabs there, like, what's up with like Saudi Arabia at this point? Where's the Shah of Iran? Where's all them? Long before Theodore Herzl launched political Zionism, powerful British Christians advocated for a Jewish return to the Holy Land for biblical and imperial reasons. So we could basically blame it on the Christians. Awesome. Awesome. That's usually the case. The British Foreign Secretary actively pressured the Ottoman Sultan to allow Jewish settlement. Believing a pro British Jewish population would bolster Britain's imperial trade routes to India. Dude, I mean, there's so much. I mean, do I genuinely just start at 1880? Or 1517? Let me just watch something about the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire. 1299 to 1922. 6 hours. Oh my god. 35 videos. 20 minutes though. Let me see the 6 hour one. Let's see how this one goes first.
Even the largest of empires start from the humblest of origins. Such was the case for the Ottomans, who began as the lowly vassals of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum on the edge of the Turkic world. In this video, we will describe the rise of this lowly beylik as it fought its way to becoming one of the largest empires in history. We will talk about the origins of the House of Osman, its early wars with the Eastern Roman Empire, and all the main battles, from Kosovo in 1389, which established the Ottomans as a preeminent power in the Balkans for centuries, to the battles with other Turkic beyliks for the supremacy over Anatolia, to the back-breaking defeat to Timur at Ankara in 1402, to the number of crusades defeated by the sultans at Nicopolis and Varna, to the siege of Constantinople that ended the Roman Empire and propelled the Ottomans to an even higher status in 1453, and all in between. So sit back and enjoy, and don't forget to like, comment and share to grace our work with the favor of the algorithm. This video is sponsored by our YouTube members and patrons, who get 2 exclusive videos weekly.
I don't know.
Available
This
anywhere
guy's
else
voice
for their
is...
kind support of our channel. You can join their ranks to watch more than 160 videos, including our series on the Pacific War, Punic Wars, Persian Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Russo-Japanese War, North African Campaign of World War II, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, Albigensian Crusades, and much more. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to get the exclusive videos, early access to all public videos, our schedule, wallpapers, access to a special Discord server where we're very active, and much more. Thanks for supporting.
Indian elephants are 4 times stronger than African elephants.
For centuries, the hilly mountain ranges of Anatolia had been the breeding grounds of major civilizations, and an
Anatolia.
integral part of many major empires from world history, like the Hittites, Lydians, Achaemenids, and Alexander the Great's Macedonian Empire. From the 2nd century BC to the 11th century AD, Anatolia, with its rich natural resources and major urban centers, came under the domination of the Roman Empire and later its medieval Byzantine successor. Over the centuries, the peninsula also served as a natural fortress for the Romans in their wars against the Sassanids and the various Islamic caliphates of the Middle Ages. However, the Roman hold on Anatolia would decline in the aftermath of the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, which would see the great Seljuks under their leader, Alparslan, conquer most of the peninsula in a swift military campaign. What followed was a great migration of Turkic peoples into Anatolia, thus forever intertwining the histories of these people with the lands in which they now
So in
settled.
1071, the Turks conquered.
Within a century after Manzikert, the great Seljuk Empire would crumble from within.
Oh, was it 1071? I didn't even
Land
see.
to Anatolia. Seljuks under their leader, Attila of Manzikert,
Yeah,
would conquer
1071.
most of the peninsula, kick peoples into in which they now settled. Within a century after Manzikert, the great Seljuk Empire would crumble from within after years of decentralization and
Within a century.
in Anatolia, a new rump state, the Sultanate of Rum, would continue to carry the Seljuk legacy in the region, with
1195 right
styling
now.
themselves the successors of the once powerful Seljuk Empire. During the course of the 12th century, the Sultanate of Rum would find itself at the forefront of European Crusader armies and a resurgent Byzantine Empire under the Komneni dynasty, which would result in the Sultanate losing its military and political influence within the western regions of the Anatolian Peninsula. However, with the Latin Knights crippling their ostensible Byzantine allies at the sack of Constantinople in 1204, and a new Mongol threat to the east preoccupying the many Islamic states of the Iranian plateau, the
I'm already
Sultanate
lost.
of Rome was afforded a period of peace from its hostile neighbors. During the reign of Kekubad I, the Sultanate of Rum would go through a military and architectural golden age of its own, which would see the state transform into a regional power at the crossroads between Europe and Asia. It is during this period that the Ottoman story would begin. Before we go into the origins of the Ottoman Empire, it's important
Wait.
to
What year
remember
was that?
the period that the Ottoman story would begin.
1235. Ottomans, 1235.
Before we go into the origins of the Ottoman Empire, it's important to remember that many of the events regarding the foundation of the state are shrouded in mystery, owing to the fact that only a handful of major primary sources were written about the Ottomans during this era, and the fact that the Ottomans did not start to record their own history up until the 15th century.
What?
Consequently, many modern-day historians are conflicted by the series of events that led up to the foundation of the Ottoman state. So we will instead relay the story as it is traditionally told. During the early decades of the 13th century, many nomadic Turkic tribes from Central Asia and Iran fled their ancestral homes in the wake of Genghis Khan's invasion of these regions. One of these fleeing tribes would be the Kayis, the direct predecessors to the Ottomans. Originally from modern-day Turkmenistan, the Kayi
Came
tribe
from
would be attributed by
places the
11th century
Mongols
Turkic
conquered.
historian Mahmud al-Kashgari as being one of the original 22 tribes to come out of the lineage of Oghuz Khan, the legendary and mythical founder of the Turkic peoples of Central Asia. Later Ottoman genealogy from the 15th to 16th centuries would cite that the Ottoman dynasty had direct blood connections with the mythical warlord as a way to gather imperial legitimacy within the Turkic-speaking world. However, evidence of this direct blood connection is met with skepticism by modern-day historians.
Direct blood
Whatever the
connection,
case,
huh?
during the 1220s, the Kayis, along with many other Turkic tribes, began their migrations west towards Anatolia. During this exodus, the leader of the Kayis, Suleiman Shah, would drown in the Euphrates River in northern Syria in 1227, thus leaving the tribe to his son, Ertugrul Gazi. Before the closure of the decade, Ertugrul would successfully lead his people into Anatolia and enroll himself and the Kayi tribe in the service of Seljuk Sultan Kekubad I. During this period, the Sultan of the Seljuks ruled his realm through various Turkish governors and dozens of separate semi-autonomous chieftains whose leaders were known as Uch Bey, a title similar to the Western European Margrave. These chiefdoms around the Sultanate would supply the state with warriors called Ghazis, who were Muslim soldiers who prioritized fighting and plundering in non-Muslim lands in order to gain
Fighting and plundering,
for
alright.
themselves. Subsequently, Ertugrul and his followers too would become Ghazi warriors under the Rum umbrella. In order to establish his loyalty to the state, Ertugrul Ghazi, along with his 400 Ghazi warriors, would fight alongside the Seljuks during the Battle of Yassi-Chemen against an exiled Khwarezmian Shah. The pursuing battle would end in a decisive Seljuk victory, which would see the Khwarezmians being pushed out of Seljuk territories. For their services on the battlefield, Kekubad would gift the Kayi tribe a plot of land at Karacha Mountain, near modern-day Diyarbakir, before permanently settling the tribe near Ankara, placing them near the western frontiers of the Sultanate. Now that they had established a home base for themselves, the Kayis would spend the next couple of decades conducting small raids.
No, wrong one, bro. I pressed.
Joining the ranks of other Ghazi warbands and Turkic clans in the process. It was during these raids that Ertugrul Ghazi would seize the village of Suyut for the Sultanate in 1231. Once again, for his military services, Ertugrul Ghazi would be gifted the villages of Suyut and Dominate.
Oh my bad aim.
The rank of Uch Bey. The golden age
Wow.
of Rum would end alongside the death of Kekubad I, as the Mongol armies of Ugadei Khan, Genghis Khan's son and successor, were now at the doorstep of Anatolia.
Shit, so the Mongols.
II, lacking the martial and diplomatic talents of his late father, began his reign by openly refusing to submit to Mongol suzerainty. The new Seljuk Sultan would instead form a Muslim-Christian coalition against the Mongols in 1243.
No
The
shot.
ensuing battle of Kuseta, the Mongols would
Muslim-Christian
decimate the coalition,
alliance?
thus ending any major resistance to their hegemony in Anatolia.
What? No
Consequently,
way.
The Sultanate of Rum would be Anna. The newly crowned Kekesra II, lacking the martial and
37.
diplomatic talents of his late father, began his reign by openly refusing to submit to Mongol suzerainty. The new Seljuk Sultan would instead form a Muslim-Christian coalition against the Mongols in 1243.
I gotta look this up. 1243 Muslim Christian Alliance. The Treaty of Alcra? Is this what we're talking about, dude? Muslim Christian Alliance against Israel? No. Against the Mongols. Okay, so what this guy said is kind of wrong. But the source is Quora. Let me see this. Wait, the Franco-Mongol alliance. Several attempts at a military alliance between the Frankish Crusaders and the Mongol Empire against the Islamic Caliphates, their common enemy, were made by various leaders among them during the 13th century. Such an alliance might have seemed an obvious choice. The Mongols were already sympathetic to Christianity, given the presence of many influential Nestorian Christians in the Mongol court. The Franks in both Western Europe and the Levantine Crusader states were open to the idea of support from the East, in part owing to the long-running legend of the mythical Prester John, an Eastern king in the Eastern Kingdom who many believed would one day come to the assistance of the Crusaders in the Holy Land. What? The Franks and Mongols also shared a common enemy in the Caliphates. However, despite many messages, gifts, and emissaries over the course of several decades, the often proposed alliance never came to fruition. Contact between Europeans and Mongols began around 1220 with occasional messages from the papacy and European monarchs to the Mongol leaders such as the Great Khan, and subsequently to the Ilkhans and Mongol conquered Persia. Communications tended to follow a recurring pattern. The Europeans asked the Mongols to convert to Western Christianity, while the Mongols responded with demands for submission and tribute. The Mongols had already conquered many Christian and Muslim states in their advance across Asia, and after destroying the Nizars of Alamut and the Muslim Abbasid and Ayyubid dynasties for the next few generations fought the remaining Islamic power in the region. The Egyptian Mamluks, Hethum I, king of the Christian state of Cilician Armenia, had submitted to the Mongols in 1247 and strongly encouraged other monarchs to engage in a Christian-Mongol alliance. He was only able to persuade his son-in-law. So wait, so the king of the Christian state of Cilician Armenia they submitted in 1247 and strongly encouraged other monarchs to engage in a Christian-Mongol alliance, but was only able to persuade his son-in-law, Prince Bohemond, was at 4 of the Crusader state of Antioch, who submitted in 1260. Other Christian leaders, such as the Crusaders of Acre, whatever, were more mistrustful of the Mongols, perceiving them as the most significant threat in the region. The barons of Acre therefore engaged in an unusual passive alliance with the Muslim Mamluks, allowing Egyptian forces to advance unopposed through Crusader territory to engage and defeat the Mongols at the pivotal battle of Ain Jalut in 1260. But what about 1243? Nothing happened in 1243. There had been long rumors and expectations among Western Europeans that a great Christian ally would come out from the East. These rumors circulated as early as the First Crusade, and usually surged in popularity after the Crusaders lost a battle. A legend arose about a figure known as Prester John. What? Prester John. Alright. Sick, dude. Was a postulated Christian patriarch, presbyter, and king. Stories popular in Europe in the 12th to 17th century told of a Nestorian patriarch and a king who was said to rule over a Christian nation lost amid the pagans and Muslims in the Orient. Really? Who lived in a far-off India, Central Asia, or perhaps even Ethiopia. This legend developed a life of its own, and some individuals who came from the East were greeted with expectations that they might be forces sent by the long-awaited Prester John. In 1210, news reached the West of the battles of the Mongol Kuchlug. Leader of the largely Christian tribe of the Naimans. Kuchlug's forces had been battling the powerful Khwarezmian Empire, whose leader was the Muslim Muhammad II of Khwarezm. Rumors circulated in Europe that Kuchlug was the mythical Prester John, again battling the Muslims in the East. During the Fifth Crusade, as the Christians were unsuccessfully laying siege to the Egyptian city of Damietta, the legend of Prester John became conflated with the reality of Genghis Khan's rapidly expanding empire. Mongol raiding parties were beginning to invade the Eastern Islamic world in Tanzania and Persia in 1219-1221. Rumors circulated among the Crusaders that a Christian king of the Indies, a King David who was either Prester John or one of his descendants, had been attacking Muslims in the East and was on his way to help the Christians in their crusade. In a later dated June 20th, 1221, Pope Honorius III even commented about forces coming from the Far East to rescue the Holy Land. After the division of the Mongol Empire in 1259, What about 1247? Or 1243? 1221? And then we just skip to 1259? After the division of the Mongol Empire in 1259, his empire was divided by its descendants into four sections of the Khanates, which degenerated into civil war, although the Yuan emperors held the nominal title of Khagan of the empire. Kagan. Wait, the first official communications between Western Europe and the Mongol Empire occurred between Pope Innocent IV, 1243, 1245, and the Great Khans, via letters and envoys that were sent overland and could take years to arrive at their destination. The communications initiated what was to become a regular pattern in European Mongol communications. The Europeans would ask the Mongols to convert to Christianity, and the Mongols would respond with demands for submission. The Mongol invasion of Europe ended in 1242, in part because of the death of the Great Khan Ogedi, successor to Genghis Khan. When one great Khan died, Mongols from all parts of the empire were recalled to the capital to decide who should be the next Great Khan. In the meantime, the Mongols' relentless march westward had displaced the Khwarezmi Turks, who themselves moved west. eventually allying with the Ayyubid Muslims in Egypt. Along the way, the Ayyubids took Jerusalem from the Christians in 1244. After the subsequent loss at the Battle of Laforb, Christian kings began to prepare for a new crusade, the seventh one, declared by Pope Innocent IV in June 1245 at the First Council of Lyon. The loss of Jerusalem caused some Europeans to look to the Mongols as potential allies of Christendom, provided the Mongols could be converted to Western Christianity. Fuck off. Hold on. Pope Innocent IV had issued multiple papal bulls, some of which were sent with an envoy, the Franciscan John of Plano Carpini, to the Emperor of Tartars. All right. In a letter now called the Cum Non Solum, Pope Innocent expressed a desire for peace and asked the Mongol ruler to become a Christian and to stop killing Christians. However, the new Great Khan, Guyuk, who had been installed at Karakorum in 1246, replied only with a demand for the submission of the Pope and a visit from the rulers of the West in homage to Mongol power. You should say with a sincere heart, I will submit and serve you, thou thyself at the head of all the princes. Come at once to serve and wait upon us. At that time I shall recognize your submission. If you do not observe God's command, and if you ignore my command, I shall know you as my enemy. Guyuk Khan's letter to Pope Innocent IV, 1246. I mean, they're used to saying I will submit and serve you, so why not, man? The Christians love that shit. A second mission sent in 1245 by Pope Innocent was led by the Dominican Asilian of the Lombardia, who met with the Mongol commander Baiju near the Caspian Sea in 1247. Baiju, who had plans to capture Baghdad, welcomed the possibility of an alliance and sent a message to Rome via his envoys, Ibeg and Circus. They then returned a year later with Pope Innocent's letter, Viam Agnoser Veritatis. Veritatis, I don't know, in which he appealed to the Mongols to cease their menaces. Well, basically, the Christians never beat the Mongols ever, and they surrendered every time, basically. But what happened in 1243? Where did this guy get the whole Christian whatever alliance from? Because apparently that's not. I haven't found anything about this. Prester John. Holy fuck. These accounts were often embellished with various tropes of medieval popular literature, depicting Prester John as a descendant of the three Magi, ruling a kingdom full of riches, marvels, and strange creatures. First thought to reside in India, became aware of the Mongols. Accounts placed the king in Central Asia. And eventually, Portuguese explorers came to assume that the term was a reference to Ethiopia, which at the time was an isolated Christian exclave distant from any other Christian ruled territory. Originates from a letter that the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Komnenos received in 1165. The sender was John, Christian sovereign and Lord of Lords. The letter described the very rich lands of this monarch located in Central Asia. The king said he lived in an immense palace made of gems and gold and said he governed a huge territory extending from Persia to China. And for many years, the idea of Prester John was associated with the dream of reaching a sumptuous kingdom where all material pleasures were fulfilled and people lived in opulence. So it's just another fucking Christian fairy tale, bro. This guy never existed. Prester John. Alright, bro. Good one. Someone's John Christian Sovereign and Lord of Lords? Who the fuck sent that? Who's this guy? This guy actually trolled the fuck out of him. It had to have been like some just peasant who was like fucking with him. No way. Legend of Prester John drew strongly from earlier accounts of the Orient and of Westerners' travels there. Particularly influential were the reports of St. Thomas the Apostle's proselytizing in India, recorded especially in the 3rd century work known as the Acts of Thomas. This text inculcated in Westerners an image of India as a place of exotic wonders and offered the earliest description of St. Thomas establishing a Christian sect there. So people were just talking about India? Additionally, the tradition may have drawn from the shadowy early Christian figure John the Presbyter of Syria, whose existence is first inferred by the ecclesiastical historian and bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, based on his reading of early church fathers. This man said in one document to be the author of 2 of the epistles of John. Was supposed to have been the teacher of the martyr Bishop Papias, who had in turn taught Irenaeus. However, little links this figure, supposedly active in the late 1st century, to be the Prester John narrative beyond the name. The title Prester is an adaptation of the Greek word something, presbyterios, literally meaning elder, and is used as the title of priests holding high office. Indeed, presbyter is the origin of the English word priest. Later accounts of Prester John borrowed heavily from literary texts concerning the East, including the great body of ancient and medieval geographical and travel literature. Details were often lifted from literary and pseudo-historical accounts, such as the tale of Sinbad the Sailor, the Alexander Romance, a famous account of Alexander the Great's conquest, were especially influential in this regard. So it's just a bunch of fucking stories and historical accounts mixed into one. Like it's Alexander the Great's kingdom with this John the Presbyter of Syria, and as well as some like Indian like lore. Holy shit. And the Nestorianism, the Church of the East or whatever. Man, Christians love their fairy tales, don't they? From the 2020s to the 2040s, Mongols invaded and conquered the Turkic states of Volga, Bulgaria, Cumania, and Iranian state of Alania, and various principalities in Eastern Europe. Following this, they began their invasion into Central Europe by launching a 2-pronged invasion of the then fragmented Poland, culminating in the Battle of Legnica, whatever, and the Kingdom of Hungary, culminating in the Battle of Mohi. Invasions were also launched into the Caucasus against the Kingdom of Georgia, the Chechens, the Ingush, and the Circassia, though they failed to subjugate the latter. More invasions were launched in Southeast Europe against Bulgaria, Croatia, and the Latin Empire. The operations were planned by General Subutai, and commanded by Batu Khan and Khaden, whatever, 2 grandsons of Genghis Khan. Their conquests integrated much of Eastern European territory into the empire of the Golden Horde. Really? Corny ass name. Warring European princes realized they had to cooperate in the face of a Mongol invasion, so local wars and conflicts were suspended in parts of Central Europe, only to be resumed after the Mongols had withdrawn. After the initial invasions, subsequent raids and punitive expeditions continued into the late 13th century. Oh, 1246, 1236, 1242. The Mongolian army that invaded Europe in the 13th century, principally the campaigns led by Batu Khan and Subutai, were highly diverse and ethnically mixed, with ethnic Mongols often comprising a minority of the total force, while the leadership, elite cavalry, and corps command in the Tumen units remained Mongol, mainly the whatever. Significant majority of the soldiers, estimated by some historians to be 70 to 80%, and so the core army, were Turkic nomads of the Eurasian steppe, mainly Cumans, Kipchaks, Bashkirs, Volga Bulgars, nice name, Volga Tatars, Kazkas, and Uyghurs. Really, Uyghurs. Damn, so they got fucked by the Mongols, and now they're getting fucked by the Chinese, which were identified in contemporary European sources as tatars. Tatars, yeah, that's tatars for sure. There were also significant numbers of conscripts from conquered sedentary populations like Chinese people from northern China, Iranian peoples from greater Persia, and Caucasians. The Mongol army operationally took soldiers and technology from the peoples they conquered. Chinese specialists, prized due to their expertise in siegecraft, gunpowder, metallurgy, and road construction, were primarily kept in the rear echelon, operating siege machinery or managing logistics. Even back then, the Chinese were kept doing math. Some academics have theorized that Mongolian reliance on Chinese and Muslim siege engineers and their struggles when those non Mongol specialists were killed or bogged down by European stone fortifications were more important reasons for the Mongolian withdrawal of Europe than the death of Ogheti Khan. Sheesh. On the other hand, the Iranians and other Muslims served as the sole bureaucratic, financial, and logistical backbone of the Mongol war machine, because Mongols historically despised the tedious work of sedentary administration and urbanization. According to primary sources like Atta Malik Juvani or Rashid al-Din, the Iranians established a network of overseers that was responsible for taking the census, drafting local European men in the infantry, and collecting the taxes that funded the westward march. In the end, they settled in the Volga region to manage the empire's western frontier in modern European Russia, being key to the players in the Islamization of the Golden Horde. Later, troops of the Russian principalities were recruited after the fall of the Kievan Rus and were deployed against Poland, Hungary, and the HRE, Holy Roman Empire. So even back then, diversity was like a strength. Iranians handled the tax collecting and some bureaucratic bullshit. The Chinese did logistics and some construction and some other shit. And the Muslims were fucking siege like experts. And the Mongols were they're just fucking warriors. Like they just went out there and killed and led leaders. 1223, but dude, can I just get to 1243? Da, 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 da. Crimea, Batud. Invasion of Central Europe. Um, he spent spies into Poland and Hungary and as far as Eastern Austria. Uh, Commanded by Batu Khan and two other familiar related princes. Three armies. One army defeated an alliance which included forces from fragmented Poland and their allies, led by Henry II of the Pious, Duke of Silesia, in the Battle of Legnica. A second army crossed the Carpathian Mountains, and a third followed the Danube. The armies regrouped and crushed Hungary in 1241, defeating the Hungarian army at the Battle of Mohi in April 11, 1241. Devastating Mongol invasion killed half of Hungary's population. Holy shit. The armies swept the plains of Hungary over the summer and in early 1242 regained impetus. Yo, honestly, we shouldn't have even asked. Yo, fuck the Mongols, fuck Mongolia, because of what you guys have just done throughout history. Like, yeah, the Jews are gonna go over there. Fuck you guys. They don't even get a say. What the hell is this? I mean, the Mongols are just going around killing everybody. Half of Hungary's population just gone. I mean, does Mongolia even deserve a state at this point? The army swept the plains of Hungary over the summer and in early 1242 regained impetus and launched campaigns into the Dalmatia and Moravia. The Great Khan, however, died in December 1241, and on hearing the news, all the princes of the blood, nice, went back to Mongolia to elect the new Khan. After sacking Kiev, Batu Khan sent a smaller group of troops to Poland, destroying Lublin and defeating an inferior Polish army. Other elements not part of the main Mongol force encountered difficulty near the Polish-Halych border. There, the voivode, warlord in central southeastern, in use since the early Middle Ages, primarily refer to the medieval rulers of the Romanian inhabited states and of governors and military commanders of Polish, Hungary, and probably some other places. Attacked them with the remaining Crocavian knights, which were few in number, but determined to vanquish the invader or die. Surprise gave the Poles an initial advantage, and they managed to kill many Mongol soldiers. When the invaders realized the actual numerical weakness of the Poles, they regrouped, broke through the Polish ranks, and defeated them. Alright. During the fighting, many Polish prisoners of war found ways to escape and hide in the nearby woods. The Polish defeat was partially influenced by the initial success of Polish knights having been distracted by looting. Holy greedy ass Polish. Holy. Looting while your country just got fucking shit on and destroyed? Nice job, man. Nice job. In April 9th, 1241, Mongol detachments entered the Margravate of Messian and the March of Lusatia, following a decisive Mongol victory at the Battle of Legnica in Poland. Mongol light reconnaissance units led by Ordon Khan pillaged through Messian and burned most of the city of Messian to the ground. The Chronica Sancti Pantolenius records these attacks. How am I still not at 1243? 1229. Why did we just go backwards? 1241. What the fuck? Continued pillaging throughout Poland's neighboring states. King Wenceslas I of Bohemia returned to protect his kingdom after arriving in Legnica a day late. What the fuck are you talking about? He wasn't even there? Wait. He died 1253. During the Mongol invasion of Poland, Duke Henry of the Pius of Silesia, yeah, this guy was a bit farther back. This guy's army started looting. I'm pretty sure that's who they were talking about, right? Yeah, the voivode. Or was he farther back? He might have been farther back here. Yeah, here. Okay, yeah. So it wasn't his army. This was a completely different army. Okay, wait, hold on. However, initially asked his help in fighting off the Mongols. However, as Wenceslas was coming to his aid in Legnica with a force of 50,000, impatience forced Henry II to attack the Mongols without Bohemia's help. Following the Mongol victory, Wen fell back to protect Bohemia. He gathered reinforcement from Thuringia and Saxon along the way before taking refuge in Bohemia's mountainous countries, whose terrain would reduce the mobility of the Mongolian cavalry. When a Mongol vanguard assaulted Klodsko, the Bohemian cavalry easily defeated them in the mountain passes. After their failure against Wen's army, the Mongols, led by Bader and Kaden, turned away from Bohemia and Poland and went southward to reunite with Batu and Subati in Hungary, who had won a Pyrrhic victory over the Hungarians at the Battle of Mohi. Such as Wenceslaus's success against the invaders, that chroniclers sent messages to Emperor Frederick II of his victorious defense. Let's see. But this guy wasn't even there when his... Like, did he actually protect his kingdom, or was his kingdom already fucking destroyed when he got there? Because it doesn't really make it clear. The Mongols then tried to take the town of Olomouc, but Wenceslas, with the aid of Austrian Babenbergs, repulsed the raid. The Mongol commander was captured in a sortie near Olomouc. However, due to limited historical data, the Battle of Olomouc at this time is questionable. Page does not exist. Under Wenceslas's leadership during the Mongol invasion, Bohemia remained one of a few Central European kingdoms that was never pillaged by the Mongols, even though most of the countries around it, such as Poland and Hungary, were ravaged. So Bohemia remained one of the few Central European kingdoms that was never pillaged. Okay, so he did protect it. After these failed attempts, Bader and Kaden continued raiding Moravia, before finally going southward to reunite with Batu. I see. Where did I even click him? Was he on this one? Mongol invasion of Europe. Where did I click off that? Hold on. Let me finish. Dude, I mean, there's just genuinely nothing on on this whole Muslim Christian alliance against the Mongols. There are talks of a Muslim or not Christian Mongol alliance, but no Muslim Christian alliance. Um, mm, mm, hold on, that's actually funny. This is kind of like now. Although the Mongol danger was real and imminent, Hungary was not prepared to deal with them. In the minds of a people who had lived free from nomadic invasions for the last few hundred years, an invasion seemed impossible, and Hungary was no longer a predominantly soldier population. Only rich nobles were trained as heavy armored cavalry. The Hungarians had long since forgotten the light cavalry strategy and tactics of their ancestors, which were similar to those now used by the Mongols. The Hungarian army, 60,000, was made up of individual knights with tactical knowledge, discipline, and talented commanders. After they got help. Wait, hold on. Because his army was not experienced in nomadic warfare, King Bela, Hungarian king, welcomed the Cuman king, Kuthan, also known as Kotani, and his fighters. However, the Cuman invitation proved detrimental to Hungarians because Batu Khan considered this acceptance of a group he considered rebels as justifications for his invasion of Hungary. After rumors began to circulate in Hungary that the Cumans were agents of the Mongols, some hot-headed Hungarians attacked the Cuman camp and killed Kotani. This led the enraged Cumans to ride south, ravaging the countryside and slaughtering the unsuspecting Magyar population. Wait, Magyar? Where did they come from? Where was Magyar? They didn't mention. This the Austrian troops retreated to Austria shortly thereafter to gain more Western aid. The Hungarians now stood alone in the defense of their country. I mean, when you combine rumors and a bunch of retards, I mean, yeah, kind of what happens. Shit goes wrong. The remaining Hungarian army was killed by the Mongols or drowned in the river as they attempted to escape. The Mongols now systematically occupied the Great Hungarian Plains, the slopes of the Northern Carpathian Mountains, and Transylvania. Where they found local resistance, they killed the population. At least 20 to 40% of the population died by slaughter or epidemic. Rogerius of Apulia, an Italian monk and chronicler who witnessed and survived the invasion, pointed out not only the genocidal element of the occupation, but also that the Mongols especially found pleasure in humiliating local women. But while the Mongols claimed control of Hungary, they could not occupy fortified cities such as Fervar, Vesprem, Tehani, Győr, Panohalma, Mosan, Sopron, Vasvar, Ujheli, Zala, Leka, Porzvani, Nitra, Komarom, Fulek, Abjivar. Wait, what the fuck? Learning from this lesson, fortresses came to play a central role in Hungary's defense. King Bela IV rebuilt the country and invested in fortification. Facing a shortage of money, he welcomed the settlement of Jewish families, investors, and tradesmen, granting them citizenship rights. The king also welcomed tens of thousands of Cumans who fled the country before the invasion. Um, Da, da. The climbing over the walls, you nearby cliffs. The abandoned attacks, so the Mongols pursued Bella. And how Bella escaped after being Mongols treated. Was ordered to town and Billy only seemed split to not aid Bella before then escape the Mongols. Half of Hungary's 2 million population at the time were killed by the Mongols. Hmm. Dude, come on. Don't skip again. Uh. And there is, Okay, so the Mongols gave Europe gunpowder, but a later legend arose in Europe about a mysterious Berthold Schwartz, who is credited with the invention of gunpowder. Interesting. Died at the age of 56 after a binge of drinking. Uh, hmm. True reason for Mongol withdrawal are not fully known. Mm-hmm. They still launched, so this might be it. I saw Thelgix. This might be it. 1241 to 1248. Dude, like again though, it just kind of skips over it. Like, where did this guy get this? Where did he genuinely get this part? Of the Seljuk dynasty of Rum, the Turkmen Beyliks were under the control of the Mongols with the declining Seljuk the Beyliks did not make Oh no, dude. Hold on. The king of Armenian kingdom promised them the son of. So is this alliance that he's talking about? Is he talking about the kingdom Armenia, this kingdom of It's not Sicilia, Cilicia. Like, is this the Christians that he's talking about? Because right here it says it's not certain they really engaged in this struggle with the mob. Like, is this guy just fucking lying? Is this video just genuinely lying? I don't know. I'm not gonna watch it then. I mean, I did all that. That took me like 2 hours
The Ottoman
just
Empire was one of the
to find that one fucking claim. And even then, I haven't really got much of an answer. Oh my fucking god! I'm just gonna have to AI it, bro. I have to AI that shit. Do that. All I learned from that was that, like, fuck the Mongols. Fuck the Mongolians, yo. What the fuck? No, no. And then we go. What was it? Was there a was there in alliance? Was there a alliance? In alliance sounds more correct. That's not how you spell that. I'm missing an I. No, I'm not. So it's not even the 1243. It's not even what the guy said. It was in 1260. So that video was, yeah, I'm not gonna watch that video then. They were wrong. There was never a formal fight with the Christians and Muslims working together, like side by side, fighting against the Mongols. It was simply one point in time where the Christians, well, who was it? The Crusaders of Acre, the Frankish Crusaders of Acre, let the Muslims pass through Crusader land, like uncontested, to fight the Mongols. That was it. It was never like, yeah, we're homies for now. We're gonna fight these fucking bitches. It was actually the opposite. They attempted, it was the Europeans, the Christians, and the Mongols trying to team up on the Muslims. That's what it actually was. Interesting. Okay, I understand now. Alright. Okay. Now I've got that out of the way, I can fucking get in the game. Let's go.
Most dominant empires throughout history. Known also as the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman power was a state that controlled territory spanning across Europe, Asia, and Africa for over 600 years. In their first 100 years, due to their impressive abilities to take advantage of their weaker neighbors, and due to the massive mistakes made by kingdoms of the Balkans and other Christian powers, including the Byzantine Empire, the Ottomans will rise from a small beylik to a regional power, and they will use this position as a stepping stone to expand even more. The conquering force began around the year 1299, when Osman I, a Muslim leader from the town of Sogut, Anatolia, styled himself as Supreme Leader or Sultan, following a string of raids led by Osman and his Ghazi troops against their Byzantine opposition. The name of the empire, Ottoman, is derived from the name of its first leader and founder. Osman, whose name was actually Uthman in Arabic, left behind a scarce amount of information about his life, but gave the world an empire in his name. Consequently, due to the lack of reliable contemporary sources about the Muslim leader, current historians struggle to determine what tales have been fabricated over the years and which ones are in fact true. According to Ottoman lore, Osman I was the son of Ertugrul and grandson of Suleiman Shah, both of whom were from the K tribe of Oghuz Turks, although the latter connection has been debated by Ottoman genealogists. Nonetheless, Osman I was the man responsible for creating the first foundations of the 600-year running empire. Taking advantage of the disintegration, Seljuk dynasty in Iran and Mesopotamia, which was vanquished in 1293, Osman began expanding his territory through Anatolia as the chief rival to the Byzantine
Really? They
Christians.
added a skelly in
By
here?
the start of the 14th century, the newly founded Ottoman Empire began to spread bidirectionally, approaching the Sea of Marmara and along the Sakarya River. Unfortunately for the eager conquerors, their siege equipment was insufficient, making it momentarily impossible for them to capture some of the bigger Byzantine cities and territories, such as Constantinople. It wasn't until 1326 that the Ottomans were able to capture the city of Bursa, which would later be styled their new capital in 1335. Around the time of this victory, the first Sultan, Osman I, passed away, leaving his son Orhan as the second Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Under Orhan's reign, the Turks were now able to start strengthening their power and authority after seizing Bursa, where the tomb of Osman I still remains. As part of his military bolstering, Orhan went to his brother, Alaeddin, for advice. Alaeddin suggested that Orhan create an army of men who were paid and trained infantrymen. This is opposed to the method of the predecessor armies, which were made up of contingents and volunteers who only came together for the campaign or battle at hand. Orhan enacted this new strategy, but quickly became dissatisfied and decided to look to a relative through marriage, Kandari Kara Halil, for new guidance. Kandari came up with the idea for what later would be known as the Janissaries. The body of troops was to be made up of children from Christian families
Eh?
in territories that had been conquered by the Ottomans, which would be converted to Islam and
What
trained
the
as elite
fuck?
infantrymen and slaves to the Sultan. Making up the
Nice.
first modern standing army in Europe, the Janissaries were known
What the fuck? They're getting a bunch of children from Christian families to convert to Islam and then become their soldiers. My god. I mean, it's an interesting plan, you know? Oh, wait, that's not who I thought that was. Oh my god, I thought it was a guy. Yeah, he's dead. Oh, he's fucking dead, bro. Can't see him, can't see him, can't see him, can't see him. I hit him in the head! How is he not dead? You didn't do any damage to him? Like you didn't hit him once, or what? Wow, bro. Fuck. I mean, I got distracted. I just heard some absolutely fucking insane shit. I mean, that's insane, yo. That's fucking crazy. Religion of peace, though, huh? Christianity is no better. I'm not picking a side. They're both dog shit. They're both fucking trash. And then that's all, I forgot one part, that they were gonna be slaves to the Sultan. That was the last part, right? I forgot about that. So how do they like? If that's a, if killing people isn't allowed in Islam, what's the punishment for making someone a slave? Like there's gotta be one, right? There's gotta be one. There's gotta be some type of punishment. Can't just be allowed to do that.
for their extreme loyalty to the Sultan, ensured by strict policies and rules applied to them throughout their service, such as the outlaw of marriage. While the Janissary troops weren't considered to have truly been established until the rule of Murad I, the introductory steps were made during Orhan's time of consolidation. Also on the mind of the second Sultan was expansion. This became a heavier focus in 1331, with the capture of Iznik, following a few years later by the seizure of Izmit in 1337. And then the taking of Uskudar in 1338.
Oh, I actually want to look that up.
Only 7
Was it the Janishit or whatever? Was that the specific army that would be made of those Christian soldiers? Or those Christian Islamic the fucking converted guys? Is that them? I need to look it up. I need to fact check that though. I actually can't just be saying that without fact checking it.
Kara Halil for new guidance. Kondarli came up with the idea for what later would be known as the Janissaries. The body of troops was to be made up of children from Christian
Okay,
families.
so yeah, it was the Janissaries. These were the yeah. Oh my, 8 additional? How do I get 8 on a fucking sword? Oh cool, oh cool, oh cool. Oh shit. Dumbass. Oh my god. Is he not low? I need to see how much health he has. Ah, he's not low at all. Fuck off. My team can't kill anybody. Please, kill someone. I killed the fucking barbarian. All you have to do is kill one person. Janissary. Young Christian boys, mostly from the Balkans, were taken from their families, converted to Islam, and trained intensely. Legally considered slaves. Legally slaves, but were given salaries and housed strict monastic barracks. Forbidden from marrying or engaging in trade until they retired. Over time, and then over time they gained too much power. All right. Destroyed the core in 1826. Dismantled in 1826. Subjected to forced circumcision. Oh my god. My god. Famed for internal cohesion cemented by strict discipline and order. Retired typically in their 40s. By the 17th century. So at first it was like some horrible dog shit fucking thing. But by the 17th century, as it got bigger, they relaxed. I don't know if they still took fucking young Christian boys and converted them to Islam, but it seems a little more relaxed, and civilians bought their way into it in order to benefit from the improved socioeconomic status it conferred upon them. Lost its military character, undergoing a process that has been described as civilianization. The Janissaries became a reactionary force that resisted all change within the Ottoman army. "6,000 Janissaries were executed. Okay. So they were around until the 18 somethings, but the whole child enslavement conversion shit was abolished in 1648. Jews were never subject to division, whatever. However, there is evidence that Jews tried to enroll into the system. Hold on. Jews wanted to get into the Janissary Corps later when it was like good. But if a Jew did join and so in suspected cases, the entire batch would be sent to the imperial arsenal or as indentured laborers. Like you better not hope there's a fucking a Jewish guy in your fucking class. You're donezo. Holy shit. In early days, all Christians were enrolled indiscriminately. Later, those from what is now Albania, Bosnia, Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, and Hungary were preferred. The Bektashi order became the official religious and spiritual institution of the Janissaries in the 15th century. Door servants or slaves of the port, whatever. Central government of the Ottoman Empire. Neither freedom nor ordinary freedmen nor ordinary slaves. They were subjected to strict discipline, but were paid salaries and pensions upon retirement and formed their own distinctive social class. As such, they became one of the ruling classes of the Ottoman Empire, rivaling the Ottoman Turkish aristocracy. They stopped all efforts to reform the military. Nice. Michael Antonucci and economic historians, Glenn Hubbard and Tim Kaine, Turkish administrators would scour their provinces, especially the Balkans, every 5 years for the strongest sons of the European Christians. When a non-Muslim boy was recruited under the Devsmi system of child levy enslavement, he would first be sent to selected Ottoman Turkish families in the provinces to learn Turkish, subjected to forced circumcision and forced conversion to Islam, and to learn the customs and cultures of Ottoman society. Boys were gathered for training, school in the capital city. Young cadets would be selected for their talents in different areas to train as engineers, artisans, riflemen, clerics, archers, artillery, and so forth. Most were of non-Muslim origin because it was not permissible to enslave other Muslims. Well, it's pretty similar to the Christians. Just gotta get someone not from your country. It was a similar system to the Iranian Safavid, Ashfarid, and Qajar era Gilman, who were drawn from converted Sergians, Georgians, and Armenians, and in the same way as the Ottoman Janissaries who had to replace the unreliable Ghazi, they were initially created as a counterbalance to the tribal, ethnic, and favored interests the Kizilbash gave, which make a system imbalanced. Jeez, there's so much. Holy. Greek Christian historian Dimitri Kitsikis in this book, Turk Yunan Impartorlugo, states that many Bosnian Christian families were willing to comply because it offered a possibility of social advancement. Conscripts would one day become Janissary colonels, statesmen, and might one day return to their home region as governors. So the Christians were like, "Fuck yeah, take my kid, cut his dick skin off, and convert him to Islam. I don't give a fuck. Let me get up to high society. Let me." Oh my god, greedy ass motherfuckers. Jesus. Because it clearly says right here, we're willing to comply with the Divsmir, which is the whole child enslavement thing. See, we're recruited under the Divsmir system of child levy enslavement. So there's no saying I'm wrong. That's just fucking correct right there. So because the social status was so good, the fucking in poor areas officials were bribed by parents to take their sons, bro. Take my fucking son. Do it. Do it. Get me out of here. Take my son. Just get me out. Da-da-da-da-da. The child levy enslavement was extended to include Armenians, Bulgarians, Croats, Hungarians, Romanians, Serbs, Ukrainians, and later Bosniaks. So in rare instances, Circassians, Georgians, Poles, and Southern Russians. I mean, my God. Hey, religion of peace, though. Fuck off.
Territories that had been conquered by the Ottomans, which would be converted to Islam and trained as elite infantrymen and slaves to the Sultan. Making up the first modern standing army in Europe, the Janissaries were known for their extreme loyalty to the Sultan, ensured by strict policies and rules applied to them throughout their service, such as the outlaw of marriage. While the Janissary troops weren't considered to have truly been established until the rule of Murad I, the introductory steps were made during Orhan's time of consolidation. Also on the mind of the second Sultan was expansion. This became a heavier focus in 1331, with the capture of Iznik, following a few years later by the seizure of Izmit in 1337. And then the taking of Uskadar in 1338. Only 7 years after the latest of those successes, Orhan was then able to occupy the Principality of Karasi, around which time he also became an ally to John VI Cantacuzenus, the later Byzantine emperor. Through this new union, Orhan was additionally able to gain permission to raid the region of Thrace, a goal of the Ottomans, of course, being to capture this area and marry the daughter of Cantacuzenus, Theodora. Furthermore, under the command of Suleiman Pasha, one of Orhan's sons, the Ottomans spread their control to Gallipoli in 1354, despite Cantacuzenus's attempts to peacefully remove them in response to Byzantine fears. The raids throughout Gallipoli had also brought in remarkable rewards and treasures to the Ottomans, which attracted the attention of thousands of Turks around Anatolia who wished to join the empire's forces. Orhan refused to give up this new territory that he claimed was gifted to him by Allah, causing considerable backlash for the now emperor Cantacuzenus, which unintentionally helped lead to his downfall and turmoil within Byzantium. Things within the Ottoman world also began to shift in 1362, following the death of Sultan Orhan, who was roughly 80 years old at the time. His son Suleiman had died a few years prior in a hunting accident, and it is believed that the toll of this loss may have led to Orhan's sudden demise. Regardless, Murad I, another son of Orhan, was next in line to become the empire's third sultan, which he did with a dramatic entrance. In 82, the eager Sultan began to put pressure on Bulgaria, first convincing Emperor Ivan Shishman to surrender his country as a vassal, becoming part of a new policy enacted by Murad in Europe, where the native rulers of existing principalities would remain in their place if they accepted the suzerainty of the Sultan. A accompanied by the provision of contingents for the Ottoman army. Seemingly not giving importance to this agreement, Murad and his troops then continued pushing on to seize Sofia, Perat, and Nis. These decisive actions led to the next major victory for the empire, allowing them to conquer Serbia after the famed Battle of Kosovo in 1389. While both armies were severely deteriorated and the leaders on either side were killed during the conflict, the Ottomans still had more troops elsewhere who could be called upon and were granted overall victory as the domino effect of acquiring Serbian principality. Ensuing the death of Sultan Murad I, now under the reigns of Bayezid I, one of his sons, the Ottomans were forced to return to Anatolia and deal with the repercussions of their calamitous victory efforts. On top of restoration duties, Bayezid was also suddenly faced with an increasing threat from the Principality of Karaman. Murad had previously taken some minor
Yeah, I
steps
didn't mean to let
towards
go, but it
the
was too
power,
late.
which was built atop the remains of the fallen Seljuk dynasty from attempting to take his newly seized territories, but that was about all the attention he'd given it. Bayezid was unable to ignore the rising concern by this point,
That hit.
with Karaman moving to the forefront of Ottoman focus after the capture of
Like-
territory in Germian, Tek, and Hamid. In an attempt to keep his Turkish followers from siding with the potential rivals, Bayezid chose to make peace with Karaman before moving on to capture Bulgaria and finally venture the daunting task of laying siege to Constantinople. In response to the latter act, the Christians undertook a crusade with the goal of defeating the invading Ottoman forces. This resulted in the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, which was won by Bayezid and his troops, massacring the Crusader army that was made up of Hungarians, Germans, French,
What?
and
It
other
just disappeared. It just didn't even go
Presumably
off.
Feeling confident after the success at Nicopolis, Bayezid and his men returned to annex Karaman in 1397, despite the previously agreed-on peace treaty. The Sultan's reach now spanned across the Balkans and into Asia, making him one of the
Oh
most
my,
powerful
this
Muslim
guy,
leaders
dude,
at the
fuck
time.
off.
His goal seemed to be that of his predecessors and future successors.
He's bold.
Expand. While there is relatively very little information dating back to the first 100 years of Ottoman power, we do know that the period of time from 1300 through 1400 served as a springboard for the empire's growth and prosperity that was to come.
This one's kind of ass, I'm not gonna lie. Nah, this Kings and Generals guy, I just don't trust anymore.
Complex and enduring empires. At its height, it stretched from Europe through the Middle East to the north coast of
Holy
Africa,
shit, quality.
controlling the sacred cities of Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Its swift spread was fueled by the fervor of Islamic holy warriors, known for the speed and power of their attacks. Yet it is an empire also remembered for its cultivation of art and architecture, and the development of a legal code. This is the story of a vast and mysterious kingdom, a kingdom where sultans and pashas schemed, and a harem of concubines produced heirs for the throne. It is an empire that continues to shape our world today. This is the Ottoman Empire. It was the dawn of the 14th century. On the Anatolian plateau in what is now modern-day Turkey, nomadic tribes of Muslim Turks enjoyed a pastoral existence, breeding livestock, cultivating crops, and following the seasons with their families and their herds. But now their native lands were under siege. Barbaric hordes of Mongol horsemen were advancing from the east. Known for their swift and ruthless raids, these Mongol warriors had created a 13th century empire that stretched from Europe's eastern edge to the Pacific.
Oh shit.
Threatening on the west were Christian armies from the once great but now weakened Byzantine Empire. With their land and their way of life endangered from two sides, one man emerged as the tribe's leader. His name was Osman. He was tall, with a dark complexion and hazel eyes. He was known as a brilliant rider and swordsman.
Osmanlı Devleti'ni kuran Osman Gazi'nin etrafında
Osman was the founder of the Ottoman Empire. He surrounded himself with strong and brave soldiers, reckless men who were superior riders and could fire their arrows on the move. They were skilled in ancient Turkish Anatolian warrior tricks, ambushes, and hit and run tactics.
The key military attribute in the early years was speed. They moved very fast. They were excellent horsemen. And they used a very powerful short bow, which gave them major military tactical advantage.
Sick. Triple
over their
wizards, man.
enemies.
Contemporary accounts portrayed Osman as a man of the people, a down-to-earth leader.
He's just missing and missing, huh?
He dressed simply, ate with his men, and shoot his own horses. He ruled from the saddle.
Osman must have been a charismatic individual who combined that with a steady stream of military successes. And as word spread that those who fought with Osman won, more and more people were attracted to his banner.
By the early 1300s, the Mongols withdrew, fearing the growing strength of the Ottomans. Osman then turned his attention to the Byzantines. Osman's enemy to the west, the aging Byzantine
Wow, that
Empire,
hits!
was in turmoil. It was almost 1,000 years old,
Oh,
dating
shit.
from the year 330 AD, when
I didn't mean to
Constantine
do
moved the capital of
that.
the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium and renamed the city Constantinople.
The Byzantine Empire had once been very great, but really ever since 1204, when the Knights of the Fourth Crusade occupied
Oh, that's not him.
Constantinople,
That's him,
it had
that's
never
him.
recovered from the blow. And
Oh
the
my
combat
God.
experience allowed conquerors to move in from the east to capitalize on its weakness. And the last of these was the Ottomans.
Fuck.
In the spring of 1302, fate smiled on Osman and his followers. Unusually heavy spring rains in the Saqqara Valley,
Really?
in what is now northwest Turkey, flooded the valley floor and changed the course of the river. The fortifications along
Fucking
the
skeleton, bro.
built by the
Fuck off.
Byzantines to protect their border were
Are you
suddenly
serious?
and useless. This small act of nature shifted the course of history. It gave Osman and his
No, man, I can't. It's. I can't. I absorbed too much information already. I'm done. 3 hours. Done. I can't. I need food.